welcome to Embodied Reality. I'm Crystal Beasley. This is the show where we answer the question, how will we interact with digital interfaces using our entire body, not just QWERTY keyboards and swiping and clicking. Today we're here with Niki Smit, one of my most favorite game designers from Studio Monobanda, to actually do a little bit of creative process, expose the sort of sometimes awkward and goofy process of coming up with an idea for a game. So Niki is joining us. Why don't you give a quick intro of who you are and what you do?
Okay. Hey, I am Niki Smit. I am co-founder, together with my partner Simon van der Linde, of Monobanda Play. And Monobanda Play is sort of an experimental game company / foundation. We make weird games, sometimes physical installations. And I think what we try to do most is try to find out if we can get the human body back into sort of play. So yeah, that. I'm also running a fever now, so this is going to be a very interesting 30 minutes.
I'm super excited that you made time for me to come on the show. So you gave the intro about the playful environments, and that's very much why I'm so fascinated with you and your work. I feel like people who are making immersive experiences for humans in the real world have a lot to tell us and show us about how we can build compelling VR and AR experiences, because it's just another layer on top of that. And if you haven't had a chance to check out the previous episode where we talk more about the studio's work, I'll put a link in the corner. So to start off, I would love for you to tell me a little bit about how you typically do this process and what kind of tools you use to help.
Okay. Well, that can actually be pretty broad, because we are so media independent. So sometimes we make video games. For example, I made 2 games for tablets. Sometimes I make VR games. At the moment, I'm making a lot of those. And sometimes I'm making sort of more theatrical stuff in the real world. But most of the time, it always starts with the same thing. First, you have to go brainstorm, of course. And we try to lock down a sort of few key actions that somebody can do. Because, you know, every game is about a sort of a core mechanic. Mario is about jumping.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, most of the time it starts with, wouldn't it be cool if? And then you start thinking about that. And then we'll start, you know, and this is the very broad, then we start the very broad phase where you'll just start fantasizing cool situations. And at a certain point, you'll have to go and lock those down. And what I like to do at the moment is work just with Post-its a lot. So we have a big board, and on that Post-its, we write keywords. And some of those can be technological in nature, like VR, tangibility, using heat conductive ink, whatever. And some of them are more thematical. And then at a certain point, you have all those keywords together, and then we'll start to sort of converge again and go like, okay, what does this mean? How many of these things mean roughly the same thing? What is our subconscious trying to say? So that's the phase where you start to discover patterns in all the sort of the broad brainstorming stuff that you were doing. And then hopefully at a certain point, you hit upon that idea of like, oh, but this is it. This is the cool one. And sometimes that feeling doesn't come, and you'll just have to lock it down and go like, I think this is the best one. We can make something really good out of this.
Okay, so that's what we're actually going to attempt to do today. This is very much just opening up the doors. I feel like one of the most important parts of me becoming a designer was just sitting with super brilliant people and brainstorming. And I hope the viewer has already had the chance to have some of those amazing idea sessions, but if they haven't, here we are. We're gonna let you see it work and all, even the moments of awkwardness where we're like, I don't know if we have anything, this is shit. Because it often feels that way. So let me think if there's anything else before we get started. So you mentioned Post-its were definitely one of my favorite tools. I also sometimes use index cards when you want to be able to move things around on the flat table, so that if we end up doing that kind of stuff, you can sort of see like how it gets, you externalize the things out of your brain into a format so that you don't have to hold all of them in your head at the same time, and then you can do those fun recombinations. So do you need anything other than the notebook you have? I think I'm going to grab some index cards and
well,
start with that.
To be honest, at the moment I only have my notebook here, so we're just gonna work with that. Sometimes, you know, depending on the project, we act things out, but I'm good for now. Okay, great.
I literally have index cards within reach of my desk because I use them so much. So I didn't plan to have them, but here they are. And I have a big jar full of Sharpies because I can't really think without Sharpies and either Post-it notes or index cards in my trusty notebook. Yeah, this thing is my brain right here.
You know, this is basically a game jam format, sort of. So, you know, we need a starting sentence or a theme or a starting something. So we can get that sort of writer blocky blank canvas out of the way.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you have something for that.
Give me an example of some of the starting sentences that you had for the sandbox or for the Samsara.
Let's see, with Samsara, it was well, actually with Third, the one that came before that Samsara is based on, it was the way people connect with each other, the difference in how people connect with each other on and offline. So one is very directed, like, look at me, this is the best version of myself. You put an actor version of yourself forwards. That's what you do online, the best pictures, the snarkiest comments. And real life is a lot more chaotic and a lot more up to chance. So the sort of the difference between those was very interesting. And I think typically that sentences or themes that incorporate a conflict work very well, because then you have something that plays off each other in a way.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's also
I've got one tension that I'm interested in with VR, sort of just acknowledging where the technology is right now. As much as we know eventually we're going to get to a world in which we have tracking of our hands and feet and right now we kind of have hands and head, but we don't have hip position or spine or knee bend or ankle flex. We don't know where the legs are in space. So I'm fascinated by what things we can make that are legitimately fun with just hands and head and voice in the context of like, what does it mean to dance without feet?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I think about then is not even controlling with your hands, but creating a situation where, you know, people touch each other. Because I think if you there's so much interesting stuff to do there in just play between people. Um, so that is something, maybe maybe a multiplayer or a two-player thing. Um, maybe playing with yeah, that's an interesting one. Playing with the sort of the disconnect of touching in real life and touching on VR. So, you know, you're in different places, you need to touch each other, but you need to grope in empty space until you find each other. Technology-wise, I'm very interested in, you say we're not there yet with all the tracking, but aren't we? Because we said that before with the Kinect,
Sure.
we can track our whole body. I'm not sure if anybody's doing that, like incorporating Kinect software, 3D tracking software into VR software, but there's something interesting there.
Yeah, I think there's something super interesting there. I know we talked about this in our interview, like we have the technology to do this. Why is it sitting on a shelf? I don't know whether Microsoft is just like hanging on to the patents and maybe they're going to release the VR headset that has the Kinect. I have no idea. But yeah, it's very frustrating that it hasn't been integrated. If you've got these lighthouses that are looking at the player, look at their whole body. Why is it hard?
Then they need to be more expensive and stuff, I think.
I know. There's a lot of actual reasons.
Yeah. And the last thing that always works very well if you do stuff in real life is enlarge a small action. So blow it up. It's hard to...
Exaggerating movement, is that what you mean?
Exaggerating movement, exaggerating actions. Like, you know, very basic example of interactive installation, a very big piano, you know, that you need to jump from, like in the Tom Hanks movie, what's the name again? Grown Up? Grown? I don't know. Big. So you were talking about doing something with hands, and hands are, you know, a very small and personal thing, movement-wise, but doing something with that and then blow it up and make it huge.
Yeah, scale is always super fun to work with in general, but I think it's even, like, it's so easy to do in VR. Like, I would love to make a game where we create an environment and then each level corresponds to different maybe animal bodies that you drive, and like you start in something that's pretty familiar and pretty similar scale to a human, and then as you progress, like now you are a giraffe and you have a super long neck and you can see things that you couldn't see when you were in that environment as sort of a human-sized thing. And then we make you a mouse, and it's a completely different viewpoint for exploring exactly the same environment. And like it could be a puzzle game where you can maybe you use different bodies and you can like hit your magic transponder watch and it changes you into the different animal or something It just was such a gimme in VR. So easy to do that.
Yeah. That one is very much about scale and about perspective, viewpoint. Are those new Vive trackers already on the market? I forgot. Do you know?
I don't know if they're in market or if they're still in dev kit. I mean, I would like to say that I don't really care, and I don't have any expectation that we're going to build, like we are actually going to build a prototype of the game, but I can't imagine that it really needs to end up on Steam or be realizable with the tech. Like we can add other hardware in the same way that you did with Steve. You added a breath sensor. Happy to do that. So yeah, this is very greenfield.
Yeah. Okay. I get a feeling we're still sort of swimming a little bit to we're still swimming a little bit. So I think I need a little bit more of a focus core. So let me get back to the fact your next meeting is with a dancer, right?
Yes. Yes. We have this very juicy possibility with that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to do something with that. So let's think about that. What is dance? What does a dancer do? Dance is about moving into space. Dance is about, let's see if we can get some sort of thematic stuff out of this. Dance is about control over your own body.
It's about inefficiency as well. It's like the opposite of utility and efficiency, because that's what I'm doing almost all of the day, is things that have a purpose and are efficient. Because we want to use as little energy as possible, so we get really good at doing those sort of habitual, efficient movements. So,
that's a really good one, because you can go in very comical directions with that. Like, I don't know, the first comical thing I think of is like a game that normally would put you in the situation, a game that normally is about very precise little action and then making everything very dancey and flamboyant. Like a open heart surgery as a dancer. I don't know. Opposite of. Can I say that again? Opposite of efficiency. Let's keep it at that.
Yeah.
It's about being in the moment. It's about exploring your body.
Usually quite. Sorry, what was that?
It's about exploring the possibilities of your body.
Yeah, it's typically very social. Like, I think the reason that we dance is to communicate with movement to other people. In the same way that I think we probably started singing and dancing before we had language, because it conveys meaning.
Yeah.
This is sort of biological Darwinism, finding a fit mate.
Oh, wow.
Mating ritual.
Mating ritual, that is awesome. Like dancing mating rituals for people. I mean, how's that for a game? Making a VR game where you are a character that must do the most flamboyant mating dance to get to reproduce.
Yeah, and maybe you can be different birds. Like, I want to be a peacock.
Yeah.
I get to inhabit a peacock body. I mean, I can imagine right now I'm already doing the thing, and I have hands, so I could easily make hands control some sort of like birdie-like thing.
Yeah, that is something that okay, this is interesting. Technology that is working really well right now, I think, is the connection to the leap, that you control the hands. So maybe a sort of shadow puppet thing where
that's interesting.
That your hands become one of those birds of paradise, and you will but this is amazing. Yeah, So you start off very simple, like, hey, you're now this very simplistic, not the most beautiful bird of paradise species, like level 1, you know, and the only thing you have to do is like, have to do this to get your lady.
Yeah.
But then in the next level, it gets, in some way, it gets more intricate. That you need to do very intricate things. And I also like the performative aspect of it. Like, I immediately see this as something that is not being played just in front of your computer, but is being played when you're, you know, on a little stage with on a festival with a humongous screen behind you that is showing the digital part.
Yeah.
And you're just going there like, you know, now it's my turn. Look at what I'm doing. I'm not only playing, but I'm also performing for the other people that are looking at me with a beer coming after me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely interested in experiences which actually demo well for more than just one person. And I think it's a problem with VR that it's such a one-on-one experience.
Yeah.
But wherever we can incorporate, think about how to involve the audience that's also there at the same time. The better we'll all do at making super interesting stuff. Okay, so I love the peacock idea. I think we could probably go a lot further down that hole. And I tend to do that. I definitely, I have to push myself to be like, okay, that's great. Now let's think of another thing.
Okay.
So I'm going to put that card down and let's think of at least one more thing that makes both of us laugh. And
yeah.
Control, inefficient, exploring. Just a little meta point. I think the what is blank question is a really good basis for exploring ideas. You can just like always go back to that question and find some new essence of what that thing is to play with.
What thing? What are you?
What is dance? So if you're whatever you're brainstorming, do what is, you know, fill in the blank question mark.
Yeah. So what we did, like, what is dance? That's what you mean. Yeah.
Do you have any other favorite questions that you go back to when you get stuck?
Yeah, sometimes it just go instinctual, right? But yeah, I basically try to associate, oh, this is a little bit like you know, okay, I don't know how to put it in a sentence yet, but what we did just now with going from a dancer to mating rituals of a bird, that you allow yourself to sort of tangent off from that thing until you found something that that has that click for you, and then dive into that a little bit. Yeah, and I can catch myself feeling doing it again now, just running past all those themes. So dancing is social, being in the moment, ephemeral, very performance driven, communication. I'll just throw something at you and see if it sticks. You're gonna be my rubber ducky for a moment, if you know that expression.
I
do. When I was still at school, I had an internship at a theater play, and it was a hip hop theater play, a hip hop breakdance theater play. So some of the, at that moment, best breakdancers from the Netherlands were in it. Guys and gals that, you know, were the background dancers for Justin Bieber when he was in the Netherlands, whatever, that kind of stuff. Um, and one of the most interesting things that I saw them do when they were talking about the stuff they were doing is how they visualized it to each other. Because the first few days I saw them doing stuff like putting their hand like this, and then you got to turn your shoulder like this, and you got to do this like this. And I thought, like, what's the thing with their hands up all the time? Until I realized they're standing on their head. This is their hand on the ground. When they're doing a spin in the air, you know? Like how do you get that motion going? By sort of having your shoulder like this and putting this into it. And the first few days I totally misunderstood sort of how they communicated to each other, because I didn't flip it on his head like they did. I don't know, do with it what you want. So dance as communication. So sometimes what also helps for me is just locking down an approach, locking down a medium. And like, okay, we can keep talking in circles for hours here, but let's get real for a moment. Are we going to make something for the Connect? Are we going to make something for the tablet? Are we going to, let's choose for a moment.
So I think we should do something with VR.
Immediately, sort of another thing that pops into my mind, the very pragmatic way, sort of very if this, then that, logic-based way of building up a concept. If we're only going to work with VR, which has, if we go with Vive, which has head tracking in a certain space, and we're working with and we're working with a dancer, then this is the only movement we have.
Right.
The head into space, in the space. So.
And the body,
Yeah, okay, but
it's basically the head, though.
Yeah, the body facilitates the head, but the head is the only thing that we can measure, unless we also use the controllers, which is possible. But for instance, thinking only about the head, I think it can be very elegant as a game concept, as a core mechanic. It could be very elegant to make a game that invites the player to put their head in a certain location. And because some of them are very low, then you have to crawl. But maybe if for the next location, say it's time-based, like a dance, you have to go here, then you have to go here, then you have to go here, pop, 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 pop.
Is it like DDR with your head instead of your feet?
Or Twister.
Or Twister, yeah.
Yeah. So that could be an interesting core mechanic to just say like, okay, let's make Twister only for your head, and instead of having only a grid on the ground, you have a matrix all around you. So
that's interesting.
you don't only have these, but you also have pop, 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 pop. So you need to go here, then you need to go there, then you need to go, and about this is making something that has a certain flow could be difficult, because you need to.
I'm immediately like, how do we signal to somebody ahead of the time where they will need to be in the next 2 or 3 seconds, in the way that Thumper and any of those like rhythm games do? Because you have like this spatial ability to see the things coming towards you. So we'd have to think about how to give that kind of reading ahead in time so you can plan for what you need to do.
Yeah, or something is always right in front of your face, sort of, and you need to follow it, like follow.
How would you know if you needed to go backwards?
Because then that's one of the limits of the system. Like, it could come towards you, but that's counterintuitive. So then it's
Right. Tell me about this turning the shoulders mechanic. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, well, if there's this, so this is something that you'd need to play test. But if that whole movement interface, the visual feedback of where you need to go, is something that is right in front of your face that you're following, like then you can do this, like it's going here, so you're gonna follow it. But at a certain point, when it turns too much, you will have to start turning your shoulders and turning your hips, and
yeah, it's kind of like Thumper in 3 dimensions. It's just something that's always coming towards you in the straight linear. It's more like you have to adapt your whole body to. I think this is the thing that feels the weirdest about VR for people that are brand new to it is that they don't know they can move their feet. So having a game that's all about moving your feet in order to change the position of your head and your hands.
I think what would also be necessary for keeping that sort of flow and the feeling of control in there for the player is a certain predictability where the motion is going. So for example, you have a sphere in front of you that's always in a certain distance from your face, and you need to follow that distance, and you need to keep that in front of your face. Then if that thing will maybe go down in a spiral, so you need to keep turning down with it, then you want to know as a player where that is going.
Yeah.
Because if that thing goes like here and without warning suddenly like there, then
right, you're all over the place. This is I just had a tango lesson actually, and the instructor gave me the prompt, the first prompt about tango I've ever heard that made sense to me in terms of how you follow a lead, and in some ways the sphere would be the lead. And he said that you want to pretend like you're a predator, and whatever it does, you're just tracking it. And I felt so much more connected to the lead because I was doing that. So I think if we made something that actually sort of gave people the skill of following a lead, which if you've never done partner dancing feels super awkward, then that would actually be a skill that would translate into dancing, which could be fun as well. Like step 1 in a longer arc of games, which would be like, we're going to have you follow the sphere, and then once you kind of got that skill, then we can take you on to something that's a little more complicated. We're not going to build level 2 for this, but it's interesting that that can sort of exist in a progression of skills that you have to learn that lead up to more dance ability.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would the sphere feel like? I kind of like this idea of a sphere that's floating. The way that when you're following a lead, that you know what's about to happen and you're able to very quickly anticipate what it's doing, even though there's no signaling visually when you're following a lead in tango with another human. You are very, very close to them, and you are cued by touch. Obviously, we don't have that in VR, so I'm just talking out loud. I don't know what this is going to be useful, but this is the only way I know to to find out, to say it out loud. So you're super close to a lead in tango, and as they move towards you, like you're so close that like your thighs might touch, or you know, you're holding them, you have your hands on their shoulder and hand, so you are very connected with that kind of feedback, as well as the hip feedback. This doesn't tell you actually where the lead's legs are, so you're feeling for that as well, the whole thing. I don't know how we translate any of that into VR.
No, that's a that's a difficult one. If let me go off to a tangent here for a moment.
Yeah.
You just talked about having, you know, the hands of your dance partner on your hips, on your shoulders, whatever. Normally, I have one rule in VR: do not touch the person that is in VR. You know, because it's so can be scary, can be disorientating. But if you create a situation where it's a two-player game, only one of the people is in VR and the other isn't, so one of them is essentially in another world, sees other things, but still has the physical sensation of touch of the other person on them. I don't immediately have a mechanic for this, but
I don't either. I think it's really interesting though. Like, what kinds of games did you play with one person in headset and one person not in headset? I don't know if that's even what you said, but that's what I heard.
That's what I that's what I mean. So, for example, one thing that immediately comes to mind is how beautifully weird the sensation would be of doing one of those, you know, dips, going backwards while your partner still holds you, but you're in VR. So I don't know where, again, I don't know where to go with that, but that is sort of a very strange feeling, I think.
Yeah, it is a super strange feeling. There's, I also do acro yoga and partner yoga, where you are resting in somebody else's body weight, or you're holding somebody, their entire body weight. And it's a really lovely thing to learn to trust probably a complete stranger over the process, you know, in the process of a few minutes of getting to know them. And there's a couple of like calibration things that you do that lets me, as a flyer who's in the air, know that this person is not going to drop me. I can really quickly tell whether this person's skill level is appropriate for me to feel comfortable proceeding. Of course, I can see that person, so I'm trying to think if there's any the most basic, simplest things that we do in that environment that might work in VR to allow you to develop the trust. I mean, this is kind of a trust fall, right? A virtual trust fall.
Yeah.
Which people tend to hate. So what's here?
Playing with scale again. Maybe in VR, you're a baby in a mother's arms.
Oh, you know what we could do? I've been assuming that this is a game played standing on your feet, but it could be a game played laying on the floor or laying on a couch, which gives you far less risk of falling over, which I think any dance game is challenged by this problem of, like, if you need to rapidly move your feet in VR, it can get super dangerous and you can get wound up in the head tether and all that bullshit. So what if we thought about what would it mean to dance sitting or laying down? Playing, like, any of the things that we've talked about, would any of those be made easier or possible by actually having the solidity of sitting or laying?
Yeah. I recently made a VR game that you play lying down, remembering, and you really have a big, unfortunate loss of mobility, because even the head movement is not comfortable anymore because there is something behind you that is sort of restricting that. Sitting, on the other hand, does give you at least, you know, this.
What if I wore the headset and my partner controlled the hand controllers?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a very interesting. Yeah, what then? Hmm. Or what if you're dancing together? One person has the VR goggles on. You're both touching. You're both holding two controllers together, like one controller, two shared
Mhm.
hands. So
Mhm.
you're like this. Um, and the player with the VR helmet on sees certain spatial goals to where to go with the controller,
Mhm.
and the other player without the helmet is blind and needs to follow. But then that player also needs to have an advantage somewhere else, or else he's just, a,
Mhm.
li- a
Just being
lifeless,
led around.
yeah, a lifeless puppet being dragged around. But if you can find the joint mechanic there, um,
Yeah. How could the second player that doesn't have the headset either support or enable the headset player to do something that they couldn't do on their own?
I think we're falling into the deep end.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's probably time to
um,
time box and review what we've already got.
I do want to take one step back to um,
Yeah.
human touch between two people and something with VR.
Yeah, and I think it's fun to do this with you because I think you kind of go to the same places that I do when I'm thinking about making experiences, which makes me super excited. Um, we both sort of ask this question of what's the essence of a thing, and then see if you can like turn those things upside down or exaggerate those characteristics. So that's one technique for brainstorming, and then the other technique is thinking about like what do we have in this technology? What do we got? We got a headset. We got two controllers. What do we got in Connect? What do we got in these different things? What can we put in the environment? It's basically like what does the technology already enable? And I've never seen a VR experience where I had the headset and other people had the controllers, or maybe I have one controller and somebody else has a different one. So it's like, how do you exploit the tech that we have in a way that is interesting and maybe enables a completely different kind of experience? Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you this earlier. To what extent do you, instead of thinking about what motion would be fun, actually just do some motions until you find something that's interesting and then create a game mechanic around that?
Well, with us, more about social situations or actions, instead about
Mm-hmm.
a singular motion. So, situations like painting with light, um, walking around while your eyes are not in your own head anymore, but in a camera high
Mm-hmm.
up on the wall, um, playing with sand.
We have a whole bunch of cards that I wrote down, at least, that are about like some interesting provocation. I'm going to read a couple. Control by touching each other, two-player multi. Exploring the disconnect between touching in real life versus virtual. What would it mean to dance seated? What would twist over your head look like? What would it be like for one player to have a headset and the second to have chain controls? Exploring the human touch between two people in VR. One player in VR, one player not in VR, and what would it mean to dance without feet? So it's kind of like, I think of those as jumping off point questions.
Yeah.
Technologies we talked about: OpenPerform, Connect plus VR, Vive trackers, and using a giant screen to display what's going on. And then we had a couple of ideas: dance, open heart surgery. It's cracked me up. Learning to swallow in dance by sort of becoming a predator and chasing a spear. The mating ritual, bird dance with hands and body, and shadow puppet. I think that's kind of the same idea. do you want to pick up any of those three and develop them a teeny bit more before we wrap up, so we have something to next?
So I am most drawn to just the mating ritual one with the hands.
I think so too.
Because it touches on so many things that we all already familiar with. Like it's almost it's almost shadow puppets, and everybody knows shadow puppets, so that's a very sort of welcoming context. The mating ritual context is sort of the mating ritual layer is humoristic, it's fun, it's goofy.
We could probably just almost even randomly insert some bird call sounds to make it hilarious.
Yeah.
If you wanted to get fancy, you could tie certain squawks to, like if you get really fast, then you get a squawk as well or something. But there's there's value in just putting audio cues in randomly if you can't figure out how to make it interactive.
Just moving around with the head in space and just creating a situation that invites the player to follow along with the head, going low, going up high again. You know, it almost feels like one of those sort of theater warming up exercises where you maybe follow along the move of one person, and those moves keep getting more intricate and more intricate, and you're like going down, doing a turn on while you're crouched, getting back up again.
Yeah. I think we could I'm a big fan of the technique of giving people an NPC friend to mimic at first.
Oh, sorry,
because an NPC, non-playable character, that is the same kind of thing that you are, especially when you're inhabiting a brand new body, because you kind of need to, like the onboarding at Angry Birds, where it just shows you one more thing that you hadn't thought about doing yet. Like, oh, hey, did you know that if you go really, really fast and walk, or if you go down low and then you come up, it'll look like this and it'll be really cool. Because we are natural mimics. We learn by that so quickly. And then people can obviously embroider on it.
Are you now thinking of tying those two together? The mating call one and the moving around with your head one?
I am, actually.
Okay. That's interesting.
If we get, like, the peacock is, I think, a fun one because they do have kind of a long neck, so we can animate them in ways that would encourage them to do a goofy sort of head movement as part of the mating ritual. Like, you get extra points.
I think the sort of peacocking one, I think it's most fun if you can see what you are doing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. How are you imagining that happen?
Yeah, in some sort of third person thing, you know? So
I think this is a straight up mirror.
Because I think if your eyes are in the character, you'll never get to see all the sort of weird, crazy stuff.
I completely agree. Yeah. I think you should have a mirror of the character looking straight back at you.
You said the tango thing of imagining it's a predator and you're following in a certain distance, and I suddenly thought, like, wow, maybe like being a shark and following a shoal of sardines or something. So those sardines are what you have in front of you, and you know those 2 by 2 meters of Vive room space around you, that is your ocean, and you're dipping and swimming, going up and going down to sort of grab those. And sometimes you get really
That'd
close.
Be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I bet it looks crazy. I've seen it is really mesmerizing to watch that at an aquarium. And I think it's really convenient that we could put you in an aquarium, and maybe we could like exaggerate the distance. So when I move an inch, the character moves 3 inches or something. So it feels like you're chasing things that are further away just by moving a little bit. You have a more expansive shape of the aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be super fun. I think that's I get them before.
And again, this is something that a dancer could really help in, because I think to keep the flow, that it like that a certain set of movements is fun and challenging enough without being frustrating.
Right.
You need someone that knows how to move.
Right.
So for the later levels, you could have more dips, you know, where you need to almost be on your knees and then get up again and get down again. And because I'm basically trying to find a way that it feels logical and intuitive for you to sort of dip in, dip out, you know, doing all that stuff. And at the same time that you feel like you have to do that, because if you don't do that, the distance between you and the sardines gets bigger again.
I wonder if that doesn't automatically happen if you get the movement of the sardines right. Presumably you're actually trying to eat them to get points.
Yeah, but like, say the sardines are, hey, this is my cute little plush toy. Say these are the sardines, and they're just doing this in front of your head, and they're going here, and then you're turning here. There is nothing. There is nothing preventing you from just going up with your head, right? So it's a very counterintuitive thing where you're not actually, your head is not actually the shark, because then it becomes just a head butting thing, you know. Oh, there's something in the space here, hop, got it, hop, got it, you know. Then it will never.
But they have to swim away from you.
Yeah. But it's
I think when they swim away from you, it will. I think the complicated bit would be probably the math to model how the sardines move away from you, because that's what I think that's what for me would make it super interesting, is being able to see how my movements of my head made this whole ball of sardines split, and you know, this couple of them broke off this way and the whole ball went that way, and now I have to like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's more of a crowd control thing. That's also fun.
Right. Oh, I think I was imagining that the sardines would be all computer controlled.
So this is the sardine ID is basically an iteration on the ball in front of your head, right?
Oh, okay.
Like, ball goes here, you also go there, and that's how you sort of are invited to move through the space. But then I started thinking about how do you make it predictable? Because if it's only like, this is your head and this is the ball, and that ball goes in, you know, you never know where the ball's going to go, so you never have the sort of the satisfying idea that you are following through with a movement, and that you are predicting a movement, and you're putting your body in the right position to do that movement. So then the first thing that I thought is, you need a line that shows where it has been, and a line that shows where it will go.
Where it's going. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always this sort of line stretching out in front of the ball, so that you can anticipate where you're going.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I thought with the sardines is, because it's such a flocking mechanism, there's always a first sardine going that way, and you can see the sort of the signaling of where it's going to go in all of that. You see?
Right, and sardines are shaped like an arrow. They're not shaped like an orb. Orbs can go anywhere. Sardines, they have a limit to how much of a corner they can take.
Yeah. And so basically what you see here is this game is about following a line with your head, because that line begins in you. I will make the line again now with a color, and I will accentuate sardine and head. And you need a predictive line like that, communicated to the player, because otherwise it becomes a headbutting game. Okay, I am free form. I can move in any way in this space. There is another floating thing there. I need to get it. I just do this, Whoop, I go there.
Yeah.
So to get to a place where you have the feeling that your head is like this beautiful sort of stunt airplane that is dipping in and out of situations, like I'm going up and now I'm going down again and then I'm going here. You need to have sort of almost a line connected to your face or something in front of you that you want to follow. So that's basically the mechanic behind that, and the declarative layer on top of that, sort of the description, that can be, a shoal of sardines, but it could also be a sort of very poetic game where you are a big group of little paper airplanes flying on the wind.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Or you were in a flock of birds.
Yeah, exactly. Just a sort of sparrow murmuration thing where your whole head is, those big sparrow swarms.
Yeah.
Maybe. So okay, this is I just want to make this as an installation because I think it's enough. Sometimes with physical installations, like big things that you put on a festival or something, simpler is infinitely better. Sometimes as a game designer, you want to have all these intricate rules and then if states, and if this happens, then that happens, and then we go there and there. And if you have sort of this interactive artwork on a festival, people have a very limited attention span. They don't have a big learning curve. They don't have time for a big learning curve. So it's basically about just doing something. And maybe a performative artwork where, hey, here is this huge screen, like we rent the biggest projector that we have, like the thing that you use for facade projections on buildings. And we have this this really big screen on a festival. And on that screen is computer-generated flock of birds. And those birds are controlled by people that put a VR helmet on and just make all crazy dips and stuff. And then you can put the helmet off, and then you can go lie down on the grass again with your beer and, see the birds go wonk, 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 because you were like dancing around in a sort of prancing movement while the other player is doing deep. Something as simple as that.
That would be fun. Yeah. I like the bird. We sort of keep coming back to bird mechanisms, and I think that the shark, it's harder to figure out what you would even do with the hand controllers, and like how do you control speed as well, because if you're a shark, sometimes you need to have that burst of speed. But if you're a bird, it's a little more obvious that you can expend energy by flapping the controllers to change altitude or speed.
Oh yeah, okay, but you make it a bit more of a first-person thing. You're in that space, and okay. Actually is a game like that. Do you know Fugel?
Mm-mm.
Fugel is this uh, beautiful sort of voxel-based um, VR game where there's a little bird in front of you, but you are also the bird, and you control the bird with your controller, but you're also looking around, and you make all these beautiful loopings in a sort of
Mm-hmm.
almost Minecraft-looking, colorful environment. Um,
Yeah, I think
mhm,
that's very much what I'm imagining.
mhm,
That sounds
mhm.
fun.
Yeah, and whereas I am more thinking about um, using the actual space that you have as all the space there is. So you have this cube of 2 meter space that is the Vive space, uh, and everything you do in there, that is the whole space. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there is no going faster or whatever with the controller because
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
you go as fast as you run around that little piece of space.
Got
Um,
it. Got it. Got it.
so earlier we were talking. You said like the aquarium thing, um,
Mm-hmm.
treating that VR space as an aquarium. That's exactly what I mean. So that maybe
Yeah.
that ball of sardines. Imagine
Mm-hmm.
that ball of sardines floating in your chamber.
Mm-hmm.
So um, and you must run around your chamber fast enough
Right.
to keep
Yeah.
them all in the ball to make it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's pretty much
exactly.
exactly what I've drawn.
Yeah. And you have to run around as a loon, like doing this and
Mm-hmm.
doing that
Mm-hmm.
to create the most beautiful sort of bait ball of fishes together. Um,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
that could be fun. So, in the interest of time, because I think you and I could hang out and talk about nonsense for a long time, as we have had opportunity to do in the past.
Mhm.
But for the sake of wrapping this up, I'm curious if you think there's any more to be done on either of these.
If we do, if we don't choose one of these things to sort of
Yeah.
lock down and elaborate on, then the next
Yeah.
step becomes just a sort of getting lost in sort of
Yeah, that's fair.
so
Yep.
and I see as I see it, I see three different interesting mechanics. The first is uh, the mating dance thing, using either your hands in a shadow puppet way or using your whole
Mm-hmm.
body in a sort of
Yeah.
3-point way where you have your head and two controllers to do all kinds of
Yep.
stuff.
Yep. Bigger
So
movements.
yeah. So one of those two. That's one mating call. And the second one is treating that Vive space that you have as actual space
Yep.
to either do something as a flock of birds or
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know something with the sardines, but something that invites you to now I must run here and now while still looking inwards, I need to make a circle around the room, keeping my eyes on the
Mm-hmm.
thing in the middle, whatever, and then maybe going down with them and going up. But taking that space as a one-to-one scale, um, if you know what I mean. So it's not one-to-one because
I do. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
And the third one is still a little bit wide for me, a little bit broad for me. That's the one where you said that the space is not one-to-one, and you can also accelerate. So
Mm-hmm.
you're a character in a world.
Yeah.
Um, um, what did you
I think that
mean with
one
that?
feels too. Yeah, I think that one just feels too amorphous and the most technically complex.
Yeah.
I don't think that we're necessarily exploiting that much of an interesting
No.
I don't know. It feels like the least interesting one to me. So I'm happy to knock that one out. I still think I like the mating ritual peacock idea with the whole body mechanism the best.
Mhm. Yeah, me too. Because it's also it's it's humoristic. Um,
Yeah, I think it's hilarious.
yeah. I'm gonna do this anyway, but I suggest you go look up some of those hilarious BBC, David Attenborough mating dance
Yes.
documentary videos because those
Yes.
those birds are
Oh my God, I love it.
the pinnacle of goofy evolution. I
Yes.
mean,
Yep.
they're amazing.
Yeah. The Planet Earth has some really amazing ones as well. I'll have to cut some of those in. A little bit of B-roll treat for the listeners. Okay. Anything else?
Okay, these were all very cool ideas, but some of them were a little vague. Like, oh yeah, you can move like this or you can move like that. Yeah, and if you all put it together, is it still fun? No, it becomes like a mishmash of, you know, different chaotic ideas. Okay, so then we need a structure. So where do we begin? What is the core mechanic of moving in this? So first we teach the player the most basic version of that movement, and then we'll teach them that on this movement there's room for a lot of elaboration. So then in the next level we give them the power to do this and to do that. Or maybe you find out that, you know what, this does not work within that kind of structure at all. So it should just be as weird as possible with weird effects coupled to every kind of movement, so that players are invited to try out the weirdest stuff just to see what's in the system, you know? And those are two different things. The one is a game where you use your learned mechanic to get better at that system.
Right.
And the
to refine.
Yeah, and the second one I propose is almost like one of those. I don't know if you have that in the U.S. So an advent calendar, where we have that with Christmas. It's this calendar that's counting down to Christmas.
Oh, an advent calendar, yeah.
And you open up day by day. You open up the day, and there's a little chocolate in there. So basically it's that, and all of those days and all of those chocolates are a different move, and it's up to you to go like, okay, does this do something? Oh yes, this makes my feathers purple. Okay, and what happens if I crouch down and do like this? Oh cool, that turns my whole head into you know, that gives me a mohawk or whatever. So then it becomes something where you just poke at a closed off hermetic system and just keep poking at it to see what it does when you poke at it. And I think those are two different approaches to that same concept of let's do something with a mating dance. This was so much fun that I had to just brave the fever and do it. So thank you so much for inviting me. Good luck with it. See you later.
Thanks so much.